Before the Jedi ever raised their first temple, before the Sith forged their first red blade, before the Force was divided into light and dark, there was something else, something older, something forgotten, something so dangerous that both sides of the Force agreed on one thing: it could never be allowed to return. The Jedi erased it from their archives. The Sith buried it beneath layers of lies and half-truths, and the Force itself went silent whenever its name was spoken, because this was not an order that served the Force. It was an order that commanded it. Tonight, we explore the forbidden possibility that long before the Jedi and Sith ever existed, an ancient Force order rose from the stars, an order so powerful, so absolute in its understanding of the Force, that it threatened the very balance of the galaxy. And what if the reason the Jedi fear imbalance and the Sith crave domination is because both of them remember losing to something far worse? The time before the divide. To understand this ancient order, we must first go back further than the Republic, further than the old Sith Wars, further than any era recorded in modern galactic history. Back to a time historians now call the pre-duality age. In this era, the Force was not categorized as light or dark. It was not moralized. It was not restrained by codes or corrupted by ambition. The Force was understood as a P'Gainzenvo, cosmic system of living, equation that governed matter, time, consciousness, and destiny itself. Those who could sense it did not call themselves Jedi. They did not call themselves Sith. They called themselves the Continuum. The Continuum, keepers of total Force knowledge. The Continuum believed something radical. They believed that the Force was never meant to be balanced between light and dark. They believed balance was a byproduct of understanding, not a rule to be obeyed. Where the Jedi would later suppress emotion, and the Sith would later weaponize it. The Continuum mastered both. They studied rage without surrendering to it. They explored compassion without becoming weak. They entered the dark side and returned unchanged. Not because they were stronger than modern Force users, but because they did not fear becoming too much. This terrified the galaxy that would come after them. Why the Jedi feared them? When the first proto-Jedi orders emerged, Force-sensitive philosophers seeking peace and harmony, they encountered remnants of the Continuum. Ancient temples. Star maps pointing to impossible regions of space, holocrons that did not teach restraint, but clarity. The Jedi quickly realized something unsettling. The Continuum could heal worlds, or erase them. They could see probabilities branching centuries into the future. They could alter gravity, matter, even biological destiny, not through rage, but through precision. To the Jedi, this was heresy, because if the Force could be commanded instead of obeyed, then the Jedi Code was not truth. It was limitation. So the Jedi did what they would do many times throughout history. They erased the evidence, reclassified Continuum sites as dark side anomalies, locked away holocrons under warnings of corruption, not because the knowledge was evil, but because it was liberating. Why the Sith hated them even more. The Sith discovered the Continuum later, and when they did, they were furious, because the Continuum proved something devastating. The Sith philosophy of domination was incomplete. Power taken through passion alone was crude, brutal, unstable. The Continuum wielded greater power without chains, without rule of two, without inevitable self-destruction. To the Sith, this was unacceptable. If power could be mastered without suffering, then the Sith were not the pinnacle of the dark side. They were merely addicts. So Sith Lords hunted Continuum relics, not to destroy them, but to break them. To twist the teachings into something usable. And every Sith who tried either went mad or vanished. The Great Erasure. Eventually, something unprecedented happened. The Jedi and the Sith, enemies locked in eternal conflict, made the same choice. They stopped searching, not because the continuum was gone, but because finding them was too dangerous. Star charts leading to continuum worlds were corrupted. Coordinates were scrambled. Entire systems were marked as uninhabitable or erased from hyperspace lanes. This is why, even today, vast regions of the galaxy remain unexplored, not because they are empty, but because someone wanted them forgotten. The terrifying theory, and now, here is where the theory becomes truly disturbing. What if the Force did not create the Jedi and Sith as opposing answers? What if they are fragments? What if the Force itself fractured human understanding? Because no single civilization was meant to wield total comprehension ever again? And what if, somewhere in the unknown regions, the continuum still exists, watching, waiting, learning from the failures of Jedi and the excesses of Sith, preparing for the moment when the galaxy once again becomes unstable enough to be corrected? The Force techniques the galaxy was never meant to seethe continuum did not train the Force the way the Jedi would later attempt to. They did not meditate to empty themselves. They did not surrender to emotion like the SITH. Instead, they mapped the Force to them. The Force was not mystical chaos. It was a living architecture patterns, layered over reality itself. And once you understand a structure, you can rebuild it. Force anchoring, the first technique the continuum mastered, was something no modern Force user has ever truly achieved. Force anchoring. Jedi reach into the Force and let it flow through them. Sith seize it and bend it to their will. The continuum did neither. They anchored themselves inside it. Their presence became a fixed point, like a gravity well inside the Force itself. This allowed them to perform acts that modern Jedi would consider impossible. They could negate Force abilities within entire regions. Lightsabers could be extinguished mid-swing. Force lightning could dissolve before leaving a Sith's hands, not through resistance, but through overriding the local rules of the Force. To fight a continuum, Master was not to face an opponent, it was to fight reality refusing to obey you. Chronocyte, seeing futures that refuse to change. The Jedi speak of visions as warnings. The Sith see visions as opportunities. The continuum saw them as maps. Through a technique now lost known as chronocyte, they did not see possible futures. They saw structural futures, events so deeply woven into probability that resisting them caused catastrophic backlash. This is why ancient records describe planets mysteriously collapsing, stars destabilizing, civilizations vanishing overnight. The continuum did not destroy them. They simply refused to interfere because some outcomes, once seen, were deemed inevitable. This terrified both Jedi and Sith because it meant free will had limits. Force severance, perhaps the most horrifying ability attributed to the continuum, was not destructive at all. It was removal. Force severance did not kill. It erased a being's connection to the Force completely. Permanently. No agony. No violence. No darkness. Just silence. Former Sith Lords described it as worse than death. Because without the Force, they were no longer themselves. The Jedi outlawed all research into this technique after discovering fragments of continuum, holocrons, not because it was evil, but because it could be used on anyone, including Jedi Masters, including the Chosen. 1. The living temples. The continuum did not build temples of stone. They grew them. Massive structures composed of Force-reactive crystal, metal, and organic matter alive in ways modern science cannot explain. These temples responded to thought, shifted shape, denied entry based on intent, not alignment. Some explorers reported hearing whispers that weren't voices, but answers forming in their minds before they asked questions. Others never returned at all. Not killed. Rejected. Why the Force itself feared them. Here is the darkest part of the theory. Ancient texts suggest the Continuum discovered something no one else ever has, that the Force is not neutral, that it is not benevolent, that it is not wise. It is reactive. And adapts. And when a civilization grows too capable of shaping it, the Force pushes back. This may explain why the Continuum vanished. Not destroyed by Jedi. Not hunted by Sith. But counterbalanced. The Force fractured their teachings, scattered their worlds. Broke their unity across time and space. Not as punishment, but as survival. The warning hidden in the prophecy, which brings us to the Chosen. What if the prophecy was never about destroying the Sith? What if it was about preventing another Continuum? Because Anakin Skywalker had something no Jedi ever achieved. He touched both extremes of the Force and survived. He commanded reality through rage and reshaped destiny through compassion, and for a brief moment, he came terrifyingly close to becoming what the Continuum once was, not a Jedi, not a Sith, but something the galaxy remembers and fears. The Continuum and the Chosen One, the Jedi, believed the prophecy spoke of balance. The Sith believed it spoke of domination. But what if the prophecy was never written for either of them? What if it was written about preventing history from repeating itself? Ancient Continuum records refer to a figure they called the Convergence, a singular being born when the Force begins to fracture under its own contradictions. Not light, not dark, total alignment. This being was not meant to rule. It was meant to decide, and every description of the Convergence is disturbingly familiar. Born of suffering, raised in bondage, possessing unprecedented Force sensitivity from childhood, emotionally volatile, yet capable of immense compassion. The Jedi would later call this imbalance. The Continuum called it potential. Why Anakin was never meant to be a Jedi. The Jedi Order was never equipped to train someone like Anakin Skywalker. They taught suppression. He required integration. They taught detachment. He needed understanding. The Continuum believed emotion was not corruption, it was data. Fear revealed future. Collapse. Anger revealed injustice. Love revealed what must be protected. Anakin felt everything, which meant he saw more of the Force than any Jedi ever had. And Palpatine sensed it, not because he wanted an apprentice, but because he feared what Anakin might become without control. The Sith's greatest mistake. Palpatine believed he was shaping Anakin. In truth, he was rushing him. The Continuum taught that transformation must occur in isolation. Away from ideology. Away from manipulation. Away from history's momentum. Anakin never had that. Instead, he was crushed between two extremes: Jedi restraint, Sith obsession. Both incomplete. Both desperate to claim him before he could discover the truth. Vader. A broken convergence. When Anakin became Vader, something went wrong. Not because he fell to the dark side, but because his transformation was interrupted. The Continuum warned that a convergence forced into singular alignment would fracture reality around them. Which may explain something haunting. Everywhere Vader went, the Force screamed. Planets died. Stars burned. Destiny warped, not because Vader was evil, but because he was unfinished. Why the Continuum still waits ancient. Star maps suggest the Continuum never truly vanished. They retreated into regions where causality itself is unstable, where time loops, where hyperspace collapses, where the Force behaves unpredictably. The unknown regions. They wait because the galaxy is not ready, because when the Continuum returns, Jedi teachings will fail, Sith ambition will collapse, and the Force will no longer pretend to be divided. The final, terrifying question, and now we reach the question that changes everything. What if the Force is no longer stable? What if the galaxy's endless cycle of Jedi and Sith has weakened it? What if the Force itself is calling for another convergence? Not to rule, not to save, but to end a cycle forever, because the continuum does not seek balance. They seek completion. And if they return, the galaxy will not choose sides. It will be rewritten. The temples that refused to be found, the continuum did not hide their temples behind walls. They hid them behind conditions. Each temple exists slightly out of phase with reality, anchored not to coordinates but to states of the Force. You cannot travel to them. You must arrive as the right kind of being. This is why thousands of Jedi expeditions vanished in the unknown regions without trace. Their ships reached the correct star systems, but the temples were simply not there. The Force did not allow them to see. Ancient continuum glyphs describe this as selective revelation. The temple reveals itself only when the seeker's internal alignment matches the structure of the Force at that location. Not light, not dark, but coherence. Why Thrawn was different. This is where Grand Admiral Thrawn enters the story. Thrawn was not Force sensitive, and that may be exactly why the continuum allowed him closer than any Jedi or Sith. He studied patterns. Cultures. Art. Psychology. Where Force users impose will, Thrawn observed structure. Unknown regions legends speak of a blue-skinned tactician who walked through ruins that collapsed behind him, who saw symbols others could not, who was watched but never stopped. The continuum did not fear him. They studied him because Thrawn understood something most Force users never did. Power is not chaos. It is arrangement. The continuum's quiet test. According to fragmented Kai's records, Thrawn once encountered a structure that did not respond to weapons, did not resist scanning, did not defend itself. It simply rearranged itself based on his decisions. Each strategic choice he made altered the internal geometry of the ruin. Paths open. Others closed. The temple was not testing morality. It was testing cognition. And Thrawn passed, not because he was good, not because he was ruthless, but because he was accurate. Why the Jedi would have failed. The Jedi would have attempted communion. Meditation. Harmony. Trust. Temple would have remained silent. Sith would have attempted domination. Power. Force. Fear. The temple would have collapsed. The continuum does not respond to belief. It responds to understanding. This is why they feared Force orders, not because of their power, but because ideology blinds perception. The Force is final. Safeguard. Ancient continuum philosophy suggests something chilling, that the Force itself cannot be trusted with consciousness, because it reacts emotionally. It amplifies conflict, rewards obsession, escalates extremes. So the continuum built fail safes. Beings. Events. Prophecies. Not to guide the galaxy forward, but to prevent it from reaching singularity. The Chosen One was not salvation. He was a pressure release. The end of the cycle. Jedi believed balance meant peace. The Sith believed balance meant dominance. The continuum believed balance was a temporary condition, like stillness before collapse. Their goal was not balance. It was resolution. An end to oscillation. An end to eternal war. An end to light and dark pretending they are opposites. The soft ending the galaxy deserves. And perhaps this is why the continuum has not returned, because the galaxy is still learning, still repeating, still mistaking survival for wisdom, still calling conflict destiny. Until one day, a being will rise who does not ask how to win, who does not ask how to rule, who asks only one question: what must end so something else can begin? When that question is asked without fear, the temples will open, the Force will quiet, and the galaxy will finally be allowed to rest. When the Force finally falls silent, perhaps the Force was never meant to be mastered. Not by the Jedi, not by the Sith. Not even by the continuum. Perhaps it was meant to be outgrown. The ancient order understood something the galaxy still refuses to accept that endless balance is still a prison. Light rises. Dark. Answers. Civilizations burn in between. Again. And again. And again. The Force does not end the cycle. It feeds it. That is why the continuum stepped away. Not defeated. Not erased, but waiting. Waiting for a galaxy that no longer worships power, no longer fears emotion, no longer confuses destiny with choice. Anakin Skywalker came close, too close, for a moment. He held enough of the Force to break the pattern, but he was surrounded by voices that demanded allegiance instead of understanding. So the cycle continued. Through empires. Through orders, through legends, and maybe that is where we are now. A galaxy exhausted by heroes, haunted by prophecies, still listening for answers in the loudest places. But the continuum does not speak loudly. It waits for silence, because when the Force is no longer pulled toward light or dark, when no one tries to command it, when no one begs it to choose sides, only then does it reveal its final truth, that the greatest power is not control. It is completion. And when that moment comes, there will be no great war to mark it. No chosen one to crown it. No prophecy to remember it. Just a quiet galaxy at rest.